As you will hear in this summit, there are 1,000 ways you can be part of the solution to climate change. If you're not the type of person to march in the streets and get arrested, no problem. There are many other things you can do, no matter your abilities or sensibilities. Do you buy things? I'm pretty sure we all buy some things, some of us more than others. Do you like to spend time in nature and being active? Then our next two speakers have ideas for you. They will cover how you can embrace any passion you have for outdoor sports and exploring remote areas of the world to be part of the solution to climate change, and the prospect for businesses to truly lead on climate change and get beyond the greenwashing. So please join me in welcoming Gregg Treinish from Adventure Scientists, followed by Andrew Winston from Winston Eco Strategies, as they share with us their hot topics.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. So I started my career as an adventurer. I was traveling all around the world on expeditions with National Geographic and otherwise, and pretty quickly became disenfranchised and thought that it was a selfish endeavor to be out there just purely on adventures. So I decided that I was going to dedicate my life to understanding the sciences and understanding nature, and started becoming a wildlife tracker. So I worked with lynx and wolverines and grizzly bears up where I live in Montana. Tracking them was one of the greatest jobs I ever had in my life. But I realized from this, as I started engaging the public in our work and I started getting people involved in parts of these solutions, like Megan was mentioning, that there was something much bigger to be had. And so I started at Adventure Scientists in 2011. Here's a quick video just to explain what we do.
Because of Adventure Scientists, the entire world was now available to study. Adventure Scientists expands where we can go with the research.
Adventure Scientists was recruiting extremely capable people in the wilderness.
Going to places where other people generally don't go.
Giving us the ability to look at organisms in habitats that we had not been able to. Pretty much anything's available now.
So all around the world, people just like you have gotten involved. This is the starting locations of successful expeditions that have gone out throughout the last few years. And it's resulted in some of the most exciting data sets imaginable. So I'll show you the microplastics data set, and zooming into the coast of West Africa here, you can see the resolution we are able to get. So this represents individuals who are sailing across the oceans, rowing across the oceans, who picked up 1 liter grab samples of water. They were sent to a lab in Maine where we looked at under microscope and using something called FTIR analysis, how much plastic was in each sample. So the different sized dots here represent how much plastic was in each sample. We're working on a project focused on the effects of climate change on reefs with Dr. Alma Paula Rodriguez Troncoso, down at the University of Guadalajara. And her research is all about how reefs are being affected by tourism and how we can bolster the immune systems of reefs by sending people out on dive transects and looking at several different parameters, including fish counts and echinoderm counts and much more. We partner with the government of Mexico to make sure that we are bolstering the immune system of the reefs as large storm events are coming. And so we accept the fact that these storms are getting bigger and bigger and more severe, and want to make sure that we're doing everything possible to give these reefs the best chances of survival. Across the US, we work on a project with the National Wild and Scenic River System, 3 different federal agencies that we work with here. And so volunteers, just like you all, are going out to rivers, more than 200 of them across the US. You have an in situ sensor that we use, and that's what this person's doing here up in the Brooks Range in Alaska. And we've done this now across more than 137 teams have gone out and completed surveys, almost 900 of them now. The density on this map, you can see the heat map here, where more samples have been collected, the darker colors is what we see. So this is another way that you can get involved with these projects across the US and around the world. We're going to train you. Every single volunteer that comes through our programs get trained. We do that both online and in the field. And we're really excited that every volunteer who goes out becomes certified to collect the scientific data. So you're going to get an educational experience. You're going to become connected to the issues with which you work by working on these projects with us. And it's a huge added benefit to both the volunteer and the scientists that we partner with to build these constituencies. Throughout the apps that we use, we're reminding you how to collect data. We're able to monitor in real time what types of data you're collecting, because everything for us is to make sure that there is a huge quality assurance, quality control aspect to our work. When we collect samples, that's all barcoded and sent with chain of custody. And the reason for that is that so often our data have to hold up in court. And I'll give you a great example of that now. So the illegal timber trade, which is a leading cause of deforestation and obviously a huge, huge cause of climate change, is responsible for devastating impacts to forests around the world. More than $150 billion are stolen out of forests each year. And 1 in 3, yes, 1 in 3 wood products that you buy on an international market have been illegally sourced. Those numbers are absolutely staggering. So what we've done is we've partnered with the U.S. Forest Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and others. This quote here is that the people who do the chemical analysis, we're really excited by wood cores because this study is so large that we can test geographic prediction using chemistry. It's a first attempt at anything on this geographic scale, so we're all extremely jazzed. So what he's talking about is that there have been thousands of people who have gone out now across the range of different species that are targeted by wood poachers, where they go and we teach you how to do a diameter at breast height. We teach you how to take a wood core. So you drill into the tree, doesn't harm the tree. It takes out a very small chunk. And we get at the genetic material in the heartwood. So this is an example of what a core looks like. We can do a lot of great science with cores like this. We can look at the age of the trees. We can study climate and how the climate has changed over time. We can look at fire regimes. But the data set that has resulted from this is absolutely incredible. So this is the first 6 species that we have done. 5 species. The dark shaded gray area is the next that's going to be coming up. And I'll talk about that more in a second. But you can see across the range of these species, people go out to these sites, they collect the samples, and what it does is it allows the law enforcement agencies to look at the origins of the genetic material within 30 kilometers in most cases. So there are 2 prosecutions that have happened as a result of these data sets being in place, and we expect many, many more, making it far more difficult for timber poachers around the world to steal from the forest and to increase the rates of deforestation. The next species we're going to be doing is white oak. White oak is a really interesting species. Not only has the price of lumber skyrocketed in recent years, making this an incredibly sought after species, but there's also interesting uses for white oak, like wine and whiskey making. So barrel makers love to use white oak whiskey. It presents a very specific flavor into the wine and the whiskey. And often you can use a whiskey one and then use it for wine later. And this is making it so that people are increasingly poaching these trees, which can fetch 6 figures on the black market. It's a really important species for so many different animal species in nature as well. So in addition to the effects of climate change from destroying these forests, we're also impacting the ecosystem itself. So we're asking you to join us if you live in one of the states highlighted on this map. There's 34 eastern states represented here, all east of the Mississippi. You can come to our website, adventurescientist.org/timber, and volunteer to become one of our timber collectors. And what you can do is join the thousands of people just like you from all walks of life. We have photographers and storytellers who amplify the impacts of these issues and tell the stories across different ecosystems. We have people who are coming to this work with no education. Some are PhDs from all different aspects. We ask you to get involved, we ask you to join us, and we ask you to become part of the solution for climate and for these other very important environmental issues. Thanks so much, and I'm happy to address a few questions. Can kids volunteer too? We do require that you're 18 years old to be the primary data collector, but we have thousands of kids who have gone out and participated in these projects as well. So I encourage you to sign up with your folks or with an adult if you are a child or under 18. Is there overlap, from Peter, between the work of your scientists and coastal volunteers working very locally on plastic pollution challenges? So each project we do is custom designed, both with the local context in mind. We're really sensitive to the issues of Indigenous groups and want to make sure that we're very respectful of coming in and collecting data in an area where we may not be locals. So we often engage locals in our projects. We work with them to build out the projects. They're part of our projects from the study design phase. Everything we do is designed by a scientist who needs the data. And so we're asking very specific questions, but the beauty of this model is that we can take off the blinders of what's possible. So no longer is a scientist limited to asking a question with a local context only. They can think about how this project scales globally. They can think about the impacts of this around the world. And it makes it possible to ask different questions than we could ever ask before. So that's super exciting. As for that specific project I mentioned off the coast of Mexico, we don't look at the water quality in that particular project. We're looking at the impacts of tourism on reefs, from things like sunscreens, from things like the sound that motors make as boats come by. And again, as these storm events increase, it becomes harder and harder for these reefs to survive. So we're trying to give them as much of a chance as possible in the wake of a changing climate. Are you also developing apps for public to use cell phones to collect data on urban heat? We in Chicago need that kind of app. Thank you. So from Caroline, thanks for your question, Caroline. So again, everything we do is designed with a partner scientist. And so if there's somebody who's leading that study that needs help scaling it, potentially not just across Chicago, but all urban environments, we'd welcome the conversation. For us, we really lean on the outdoor community to go and collect data. So if there's a need for hiking, biking, skiing, climbing to collect the data, that's going to be the best fit for adventure scientists. That being said, we have tons of other resources to help build out projects to make sure that other people can be successful running projects like this. So are there other questions from the audience there? How do we become a volunteer? You can do that by going to our website, adventurescientist.org, and on the timber project, it's /timber if you live in one of those eastern states. And if you don't live in one of those eastern states, there's 200 rivers in 40 states that we're doing the Wild and Scenic Rivers project with, including up in remote Alaska. We need people all over the country to get involved in that project as well. And there's also international opportunities. We're working on other studies looking at how we can use crops and the genetics of crops that are in remote environments, extreme environments, to feed the world as we grow to a 10 billion and beyond population all over the world. So looking just for more questions. If there are any, feel free to put them in. And otherwise, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for your leadership on climate and being here to represent a really important connection, not only between the business community and climate, between the faith community and climate, but now we're looking at getting all people involved. And so Adventure Scientists is one example of having two disparate groups work together to create real lasting change in the world. And we need innovation across all sectors to make sure that everybody can use their voice and use their labor and use their opportunity to get involved in these issues. So thanks to all the amazing groups that will be presenting this week. Thanks to Bob and Megan for your leadership on this. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Andrew.